Good morning again, members. Welcome back to part 2 of today's council meeting. We are now going to move on to item 4, which is the strategic planning update and the 2026-27 to 2028-29 general fund revenue budget. I'm going to ask if there are any questions to officers on the briefing reports in responses to the petitions that were presented earlier. Before I do so, I would like to just note that the council leader and myself received an email from Mr. Bryan, whose statement was read out earlier, to retract his personal comments that were made during his statement, and that his desire was to focus on the substance of the issue, and I have conveyed that I would convey that to members at the start of this session, and the council leader has also accepted the apology. We now move on. I would like to allow Mr. Crawford to make one point of correction and accuracy to his report before we go to members' questions.
Okay, thank you. Within my report, table 4.5, and my apologies, table 4.5, the total visitor numbers in the petition scope is identified at 459,000, and the correct figure should be 472,000, and that makes, and also the variance then moves from 79,000 to 92,000. My apologies, and what we'll do is change the report online after this, but it was a typo within that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crawford. Are there any questions from members in respect of the petitions? Bailey, you have a question on PH2. Mr. Crawford, you might want to stay there.
Thank you very much, Provost, and I'd like to thank the officers for preparing the report and thank those who signed the petition as well for bringing this to the chamber. The gym within the Lau offering has long been the most profitable part of that operation. What's the current financial position of the Jewess Centre now that it plays host to the gym? Thank you.
I don't have the figures to hand. I'll circulate those later. But what I can say is the gym, the refurbished gym, opened in Dewars and is being used well from the feedback from Live Active Leisure. But we will circulate the detailed figures. Sorry, Scott.
Serge Maroon.
Good morning, Councillor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Biddy. I've got the answer to your question in relation to Dewars Centre. So the new health and fitness facility at Dewars has been well received, with 19,286 gym visits and 11,481 fitness classes in Q3. This compares positively with attendance in the first 3 months of opening the new gym at Bell Sports Centre in July 22, which generates 17,000 gym visits and 9,000 fitness class attendances. In terms of the financial position, if you compare the Q3 in 23-24, the income was £150,000, and the Q3 in 24-25, it was £243,000.
Thank you, Mr. Maroon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bob Braun.
Thanks, Convener. This is all a question relating to parking, I'm afraid, on this one. I've been told by several of my constituents that obviously they live in Perth, they park on Thimble Road on a residence parking permit. So my question really is, obviously, if PH2 is built there, they're going to lose that parking area is going to be gone. Where are they expected to park? That was the first point I've been asked to find out. And the second thing is there are 2 small car parks to the side of that area. Is it possible they can be made residents only park?
I think members were aware there was a briefing note circulated in January of a capacity study of all the car parks. Without knowing details, I would say there's other parking availability within Perth.
But on there are two small car parks beside Thimble Road, which I believe are not included in the plan. So could they be made residents only parking?
That would be subject to a further discussion. I'm not responsible for parking.
Okay, that's maybe an item that can be picked up offline with the manager responsible for parking. Councillor Allen next, please.
Thank you, Provost. It's on PH2O. We know that most people who attend Perth Leisure Pool for existing, they attend Perth Leisure Pool for the existing water facilities. At least most people do. If there is no significant leisure water facility at PH2O at Thimble Row, do we have an idea of what kind of impact that's going to have on footfall? Thank you.
I don't have the current footfall figures of swimming. What I can say, built into the modelling, is currently 120,000 visits to swimming within the business model as presented.
Okay, thank you. I think we'd all agree that the use of the training pool for leisure water activities is less than satisfactory. When are we due to hear back on the leisure water options at Thimble Row? Are the options going to be brought back to a future meeting of the council? Thanks.
I've currently got consultants working on the leisure options as instructed by council, and it's anticipated to be bringing that back to council in June.
In June, yeah. Councillor Forbes next, please.
Thanks, Provost. Think back to a long time ago when I was sort of late teens, early 20s living in Dundee, and we used to travel to Perth because they had a far better leisure option than Dundee did. It looks like with this proposal, that situation would be reversed. Have we done any studies into what the economic impact would be of people who we would expect to stay in Perth and use the pools actually going somewhere else and taking their spend to somewhere like Dundee or Stirling?
No, we haven't done an economic impact and impact assessment of that. What we have within this scope is to try to identify, there's clip and climb, there's other activities, there's obviously a big health and fitness within the whole PH2O facilities mix, but we haven't.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, I was just looking for clarification on Mr. Crawford's earlier comment about the numbers who come for swimming, and whether there's a breakdown as to what percentage of, I think you said 120,000 visits were in relation to the leisure water rather than the standard swimming pool. Thanks.
What we have 127,000 built into the model at the moment for the facilities mix as approved by council. To answer you've got two. We have proposed there's an additional 60,000 if we were swimmers. That's what's been modelled in response to the petition, because that was so it's the difference between 120,000 in the current facilities mix extending to a bigger leisure water facility as an additional 60,000 per annum.
Thank you.
Apologies, Stephen. I had a little bit of difficulty in hearing. To wonder if you could maybe just point the mic more directly at your mouth. So, sorry, were you saying that about 60,000 come for swimming and the remainder for the leisure pool? Was that what you said?
The approved facilities mix that was approved in September 2024 was modelled on 127,000 visitors for swimming, wet activity. The petitioner's request to extend the scope to add leisure water. The proposal, we believe that we'll add an additional 62,000 into the gross visitors to the centre.
So, sorry, Provost, I could just have a follow-up on that. Thanks. So from the figures that you're giving us there, Stephen, your view is that most folk would come to swim as opposed to for leisure water in itself.
Many, where the approved facilities mix was a 25-metre pool, 8-lane pool. It was also there was options within that for activity, for fun swimming within that. We've also got a 12.5-metre, 8.5-metre teaching pool with a movable floor, and that gives lots of options. And we also had a toddler splash pad within the core brief. The petitioner is seeking to add a big leisure water function, and we've said there's approximately 50% more people would come to if we added leisure into the facilities mix.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. My question relates to parking in Thimble Row. Thank you for sending out the parking survey. That was useful. The survey indicated that Thimble Row was one of the busiest in Perth, and I remain concerned that there'll be capacity at peak periods for Perth city centre. Are you comfortable with the fact that there is sufficient capacity to allow people to actually come to Perth to shop?
On the basis of the independent parking survey that was undertaken, it was undertaken in the tail end of last year. I think the figures in the draft survey identified at any one time we had about 40% available car parking across Perth. I think the issue is that many people don't have the car parking exactly where they want to have the car parking, but there is a large amount of car parking there. I'm comfortable that there's enough car parking across Perth. And equally, part of the proposal in September was to purchase Canal Street Car Park and bring Canal Street Car Park into the fold of our car parks, managed and charged. And I would anticipate a much greater uptake in the future of Canal Street Car Park in Perth.
Okay, thank you. I have second question from Councillor Braun and then Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. Provost, sorry. We're looking obviously as an option for leisure water. When do you think we might hear back on what those options are, and presumably they will then be brought to full council to work on?
I intend to bring those back with a range of other actions from the Leisure Asset Review in June of this year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff, final question.
Thanks. As well as the leisure water options, there are a couple of other things that are going on just now. I just wondered if you could advise us when they will be brought back. So when do we expect to hear the outcome of the GEARS feasibility study? And you know, when will that information be brought back to us? And also the consultation on bells, and when we're likely to hear about that and have a chance to discuss these options? Thank you.
In January 2024, the Leisure Asset Review was approved with a whole range of actions. It's my intention to bring back, as instructed by Council, all of those actions, including bells, leisure water options. We've also got feasibility studies for Kinross and Creef swimming pools, net zero proposals. We've got consolidated booking arrangements, and it was my intention, after instruction of Council, to engage with the curling community in September of last year to bring back an update of where we are with the curling community on GEARS.
Sorry, I was just, what's the timescale? Is that June as well? June as well.
June.
So all of that hopefully come back to us in June.
Thank you. Have a busy June. Okay, members, we're now going to move on to introduce the report. So Mr. Walker, the strategic lead for finance and business support, is going to introduce the report, and then there'll be questions.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, councillors. Before I begin today, I'd like to thank all BRG members from across the chamber for their positive participation in the revenue budget process. I'd also like to thank officers from across the council for all the work that's been undertaken to support individual BRGs. To preparing submissions, to writing briefing papers, and to answering the specific queries, it's been a real team effort across the council. But in particular, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Caroline France, Alison O'Brien, Claire Palmer, and Craig Robertson, who've all contributed so much to supporting this year's revenue budget process. This year, we undertook a different approach to preparing the revenue budget. In approving the medium-term financial plan in December, the Council approved the council tax strategy as our planning assumption for the development of future year revenues budgets. Overall, the council tax strategy ensures the sustainability of financial resources while continuing to support those in greatest need, aligning spending plans with the council's corporate priorities and strategic vision. And I'll say a bit more about that shortly. Section 4 provides a reminder that the council has already taken provisional decisions relating to 25-26 and 26-27. Those provisional budgets are the starting point for the decisions we're asking you to make today. Section 4 also provides a summary of over £11 million of transformation and change savings that we've either delivered to date or are in train. And more information on transformation will be provided to the Finance and Resources Committee in April. Section 5 includes an update on our Scottish Government revenue funding for 25-26, which was included in Finance Circular 10 2024 that was issued in December. Our analysis of the funding is summarised in Tables 2 and 3 of the report. Table 3 demonstrates that our overall funding package has increased in cash terms by £34.496 million, or 10.2%. However, after adjusting for funding directed towards commitments or Scottish Government priorities, the increase in the Council's core grant funding is £7.460 million, or 2.2%, and that's summarised in Table 3. Section 6 sets out the 25-26, 26-27 and 27-28 provisional revenue budgets. The revenue budgets before Council today sets out the very real implications of the Council tax strategy that was approved back in December. Funding for frontline services, including £6.7 million to protect and sustain services for adults, £2.2 million to maintain teaching capacity and comply with the agreement between the Scottish Government and COSLA, and over £400,000 for children and families. The budget also allows us to redirect £2 million on a non-recurring basis to support anti-poverty measures. We also know that we need to continue to transform our services. This budget provides recurring capacity of £750,000 to invest in artificial intelligence and technology, as well as £2 million on a non-recurring basis to support wider transformation. The financial sustainability of the Council is also improved on two fronts. Firstly, the £1 million recurring adjustment to the Service Concession Scheme significantly reduces the size of our funding gap in 28-29. And secondly, the commitment to ring-fence 1.25% each year of future council tax income improves the sustainability of the capital budget. Section 6 goes on to explain the process for updating the provisional revenue budgets, as well as developing a new provisional revenue budget for 27-28. The provisional revenue budgets and executive summaries, which include both updated and new pressures, as well as budget reduction proposals, are attached at Appendices B and C to the report. Elected members should note that there are no new cuts included in these budgets and no further reductions in our workforce. In the main, the new expenditure pressures are related to inflation, contractual or legal commitments, and similarly the budget reductions mainly relate to additional income or updating our slippage targets. This is another positive outcome of the endorsement of the council tax strategy. The provisional revenue budgets also include financial capacity or headroom in 25-26 and 26-27, with a deficit in 27-28, and this position is summarised in Table 7. We do have a statutory responsibility to set a balanced budget for the coming financial year only, and we will have time to address the projected deficit of £327,000 by 27-28 in the coming years. To be clear, the position set out in Table 7 assumes that all of the identified budget pressures and all the proposed budget reductions in Appendix C are accepted, as well as the decisions taken in previous years. The position in Table 7 is also dependent on the council tax rises agreed in the council tax strategy. namely 10% in 25-26, 10% in 26-27, and 6% in 27-28. As I said earlier, we've also assumed that 1.25% of future council tax income each year will support the ongoing revenue costs of supporting the capital budget. Members are also asked to approve an assumed council tax collection rate of 98.25% and the tax base assumptions set out in Table 8. Full details of other fees and charges for council services are attached to Appendix D. We're also seeking your approval for the contribution of £106.133 million to the Integration Joint Board in 25-26. This includes a transfer of £4.273 million of uplifts in Scottish Government funding for adult social care and £6.7 million increase in funding from the Council. Section 7 of the report sets out the proposed reserve strategy. Appendix 4 shows a projected general fund balance of £61.403 million at the end of this financial year. At Appendix G, we're then seeking your approval to earmark £43.174 million for the purposes set out in Appendix H. This leaves a projected unearmarked balance on general fund reserves of £18.229 million or 3.65% of the 25-26 net revenue budget. As always, I would strongly recommend that members consider the use of reserves in a prudent and sustainable manner and maintain, as an absolute minimum, an uncommitted balance of 2% of the net revenue budget, which is equivalent to £9.985 million. Section 8 of the report sets out the significant financial risks to the Council's current and future budgetary position. Many of the risks were included in the medium-term financial plan considered by you back in December. These included funding, inflation, demographic changes, cost of living pressures, our ALIOs and our partner organisations. However, there are two risks that require specific additional comment. Firstly, around employers' national insurance contributions. Members may be aware of the £144 million nationally that will be provided to councils in 25-26, and that this is anticipated to fund 60% of the additional costs. I'm also aware that it's proposed that this is allocated based on our share of JEE, including SENA. However, this is still to be agreed. What is not clear is whether there will be support for our ALIOs, for Tayside contracts, for social care providers, or for wider third sector organisations that provide statutory services on our behalf. I'll bring back updates to future meetings of the Finance and Resources Committee as the situation becomes clearer. The other risk that merits comment is around our future pay costs. All 3 years that you're being asked to approve today include a 3% pay rise for all staff groups. The claims for 25-26 that have been submitted by all unions for all staff groups is more than we have assumed. Each 1% in excess of our budget assumptions equates to around £2.8 million. Again, I'll keep the Finance and Resources Committee updated on developments. In conclusion, the revenue budgets before Council today reflect our commitment to financial sustainability and the protection of essential services valued by our citizens and communities. By confirming the Council's tax strategy position, we can ensure that we continue to support those in greatest need whilst aligning our spending with Council priorities. The budget includes allocations for adult social care, education, children and families, and anti-poverty measures, demonstrating our commitment to improving the quality of life for our residents. Additionally, our investment in technology and transformation initiatives will help us modernise our services and deliver longer-term efficiencies. Council is asked to determine the final 25-26 revenue budget and council tax, and to set provisional revenue budgets and indicative council tax levels for 26-27 and 27-28. Colleagues and I are happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Question from Bailey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker, for the introduction, and thank you for taking the question, Provost. It's my understanding that legislation dictates that elected members must be up to date on their own council tax payments before they can vote or participate today. Could Legal Services confirm, please, that everyone is up to date with their payments and eligible? Thank you.
That check has been carried out and everybody is up to date.
Good to know. I don't see any other questions for Mr. Walker. If there are no other questions, thank you, Mr. Walker, for that introduction and for all of your work and your team's work on the revenue budget. We now move to the motion, if I can invite the Leader of the Council to move a motion in respect to the revenue budget.
Thanks, Provost. Provost and councillors, I'm pleased to present the administration's budget motion for 25-26. That's the final revenue budget, and the 26, 27, 27, 28 provisional revenue budgets. I have to say this motion is the result of discussions with colleagues from across this chamber, with external partners and feedback from the public. I'd like to thank members from all groups who have had a chat about forming and our opinion, but I'd especially like to thank my BRG group who've spent many hours listening to me talk to them. So I'd like to go on to some of that feedback we've heard today. So I want to start by dealing with the two petitions that we heard from earlier this morning. And first of all, I'd like to thank both the petitioners for their contributions today and for the answers to the elected members' questions where they were able to pose them. I'd like to say that whilst the petition relating to PH2 is relevant to the capital budget, given that officers have already been instructed to bring back options on leisure water and to explore the option of a community-led ice sports facility at Dewars, I propose that the content of the petition be considered when these options are presented at a future meeting of council, which is likely to be June. On the library petition, I also note the points made by the petitioner, and I'm pleased to say that today I'm committing an additional £1 million of funding over the next 2 years to maintain the current position services for libraries and museums in Perth and Kinross. But it is essential that the community members who have petitioned us today bring the same energy they have brought to campaigning to help plan a sustainable future for the libraries, working with officers and working with CPK. It has always been our position that community involvement is necessary for the future of these services, and while we previously agreed an extension of funding to allow CPK to work with community groups across the future of rural libraries, we recognise that CPK were not able to fully explore that because of the small matter of opening a 5-star visitor attraction. By offering the funding over 2 years, this will allow time in the first year to design the approaches for each community, with the second year of funding helping to support the transition. The position is consistent with the one we have taken in preparing this budget, a budget which is focused on supporting those in greatest need, protecting frontline jobs and empowering communities to be at the heart of our local decision making and activity. A budget which prioritises services based on the evidence of need, which recognises the challenges of climate change and which tackles some of the root causes of in-work poverty by creating opportunities for economic growth. Additional funding that we have received, I'm pleased that the Scottish Government has delivered on promises to increase our funding, and we anticipate almost £5 million more from another £5 million from the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme. However, while these additional sources of funding are welcome and will be put to good use, the scale of the financial challenge means that they are not enough to do everything we need to protect services for the people in the greatest need in our communities, avoid further public sector job cuts, and investing in empowering communities to be at the heart of delivery. Recognising the changing needs of our communities, especially for adult social care, support for people with additional support needs, and tackling poverty, is why this council backed a 3-year council tax strategy in December, providing opportunities for investment and removing the annual round of budget cuts. There's also still uncertainty about the impact of increases to employers' national insurance contributions, not just in the council, but on the ALIOs, Tayside contracts, social care providers, and third organisations who provide services on our behalf. There is also the rising wage bill that will be negotiated in the upcoming year. That strategy was agreed just before the Scottish Government budget was set, and so I'm pleased to say that we're able to put forward a balanced budget with a reduction in the council tax level suggested in December. This motion instead sets council tax increases of 9.5% in 25-26, followed by 9.5% in 26-27 and 6% in the following year. retaining the commitment to increase the amount allocated from this towards capital funding from 1% to 1.25%. While that increase is essential to protect services for those in greatest need and invest in key services, we recognise that it will be challenging for some households. Our welfare rights team already does a fantastic job in helping maximise income for households in financial need, but we also have allocated almost another £700,000 to further invest in this work. This includes a further £600,000 for the Financial Insecurity and Scottish Welfare Fund and funding to increase the capacity of the team to support more households. Protecting health and social care. For a number of years, this council has taken what have been often difficult decisions to agree budget reductions to balance the increasing cost of providing core services and growing levels of need, all the while having to maintain a National Council tax freeze or keeping the increase as low as possible. This approach is simply not sustainable. In the past year alone, there have been significant increases in health and social care costs. The number of people needing support and the complexity of some of these support packages are putting a lot of pressure on the Health and Social Care Partnership, who have already worked hard to meet the in-year financial challenges. That's why we're investing almost £8 million in this area, including £1 million over 2 years to support transformation in social care services, funding which we anticipate will be added to by transformation money from NHS Tayside's budget. Education and children with support needs. We're committed to putting over £2 million back into education and learning to reinstate previously identified savings on teacher numbers. Additionally, we are allocating £50,000 to support outdoor learning for children with more complex additional support needs and £9,000 for communication boards to support children with communication difficulties to be understood. We are also investing £170,000 to maintain the instrumental music service provision at current levels and adding £75,000 over 3 years for the continuation of Scottish pipes and drums tuition, ensuring that this valuable culture education continues. As with all service areas, we are continuing to ask officers to plan for and implement improvements. That's why we're keeping the slippage target for managing teacher vacancies to 4%, saving over £500,000. And rejecting in full the pressure of increased costs for home-to-school transport as the teams involved continue to test more efficient ways to deliver these services. Community empowerment. As the needs of our communities continue to change, how the council operates has to change as well. That's why if we're to truly deliver on our corporate plan, priority of working in partnership with communities, we need to provide and structures to allow communities to get involved. Community resilience groups are one of the successful examples of what happens when communities are empowered to act locally. Through a series of severe winter events over the past couple of years, we have seen these groups prove their value many times over, well supported by our community support and enforcement team. To help further develop community resilience, we are allocating £1 million for the Community Resilience Fund to help create and support more local groups, develop a vulnerable persons database to easily identify people who need extra help when an incident occurs, and to further invest in this area. After hearing about some tremendous examples at last week's Climate Change and Sustainability Community Showcase, we are also allocating £200,000 from the Green Living Fund reserve to deliver a new funding round. The funding scheme will be established under and report back to the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee to continue the benefits of the committee hearing directly from and working with community groups on this topic. We are also adding £42,000 of recurring funding for Bloom groups, Friends of Cemeteries and biodiversity groups to support these important community volunteering organisations, and a further £20,000 on a non-recurring basis. Furthermore, we are allocating £200,000 over 2 years to provide practical support to these groups and to plant more pollinators to accelerate the delivery of the biodiversity aims of our Grow Wild approach to green spaces. At the same time, we are allocating £70,000 for an extra cut to A-class road verges in Perth and Kinross, as our increasingly wet and warm growing seasons mean that grass verges are growing more quickly each year and need an extra cut to stay under control. After discussing the importance of community councils with Councillor Duff and members of the independent group, I'm happy to allocate £12,000 in our budget to increase the core grant funding available to community councils of up to £1,000 to support the work they do in the community. We have also included £20,000 to maintain community halls for another year. To address the challenges posed by ash dieback disease, something that I didn't know anything about until a month ago, we are allocating £125,000 for a comprehensive survey of council-owned woodlands. This initiative aims to assess the condition of ash trees and mitigate the risks associated with falling trees that could endanger people and obstruct roads. A detailed report will be presented to the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee in April, outlining the approach. This funding will allow this work to start as soon as that approach is agreed. After speaking to Councillors Braun, McEwen and Shires, I'm happy that we are committing £15,000 of capital to support capital funding to construct a leaky dam, something else I didn't know until a couple of months ago, which is an innovative solution for sustainable water flow management. So I thank these councillors for bringing this to my attention and for creating lots of conversations about whether a leaky dam is something we should be building or something we should be fixing. I had an interesting conversation with the Chief Executive explaining what a leaky dam was. He asked if it was on our property or not, so he's looking after the public pound. We are also extending the successful free bus Saturday scheme for another year, investing almost £170,000 to offer free bus travel for everyone within Perth and Kinross on the first Saturday of every month, encouraging more people to switch from private car journeys to public transport. That funding includes enough for 2 extra free bus days from last year, one to mark Clean Air Day in June and one to support local businesses in the key Christmas shopping season. As well as these area-wide offers, we're also including £13,000 recurring to fund an extra bus journey on the Errol timetable, and that was after conversation with Bailey and other members for the Cars of Gowrie. £36,000 for 2 years for the Ochterarder Community Bus Group, as suggested by Councillor Allen and Councillor Carr and Councillor Watt, and £20,000 for feasibility study for a Carserve Gowrie community transport project, and that was highlighted by Councillor Forbes. All examples of the benefits of listening to councillors from across the chamber during the lead up to budget day. Roads and structures. It is easy when looking at budgets to focus on what their issues are right now and ignore what might happen, but that approach just buys problems for the future, especially for our roads and bridges infrastructure. That's why we are committing an extra £1 million to improve road conditions. This will give us additionality to carry out repairs beyond the Category 1 and 2 most significant potholes and tackle lower level road surface damage, which will only worsen if left unmanaged. Also planning for the future by allocating £2 million for bridges and structures. While there is limited scope to undertake more structure work than is currently planned because of the shortage of the necessary skills nationally, by continuing to invest in this area, we are ensuring that the funding is available when needed. Mental well-being. We are allocating £130,000 to support mental health organisations, including £70,000 for the NUC. Officers are looking at moving to a commission model for the NUC, which would allow more certainty about longer-term funding. And after a recent successful rural business event with the NFU organised by Bailey McLaren, I'm happy to allocate £10,000 over 2 years to support Farm Strong, the charity's local work in helping farmers and their families cope with the difficulties of farming life. Yeah, you'd have to be living under a rock to miss the interest there is globally in what artificial intelligence, which I'm struggling to say, so it's maybe my intelligence, means for productivity and transformational change. Given the pace of progress in this area, Failing to invest now is likely to place the council further behind other public sector bodies and paying the price of catching up later. As a council, we benefited from the forward-thinking approach of our IT services and the previous investments made for early introduction of the Microsoft 365 Teams environment. This allowed us to quickly adapt to the challenges of working from home during the pandemic, and we saw how some other local authorities had to work twice as hard to catch up. That's why we're backing the £750,000 investment in a strategic programme of AI over 2 years. AI has many potential benefits in streamlining and improving services. So in return for that investment, we are challenging officers to deliver an extra £1 million of transformation savings in the year 3 of this budget cycle as a result of efficiency and the transformation surrounding it can bring. This is an exciting area of development, and I look forward to hearing about the benefits of this investment is reaping over the next couple of years. In line with our commitment to innovation and efficiency, we are also pleased to see that our strategic lead for finance is introducing a new Every Penny Counts staff idea scheme. This initiative empowers our employees to contribute their insights on cost-saving measures, ensuring that every penny saved can be redirected to support our community's most pressing needs. In conclusion, you'll be glad to hear, I want to extend my thanks to all the officers who contributed to the work that has gone into getting us to this point. You all know who you are. Thank you for the questions you have answered, and the information you have shared has been invaluable in sharing this budget, as has the provision of chocolate, tablet and fudge. Provost, this budget invests in the areas that are most important to us. It prioritises those most in need and makes prudent and responsible investments to support our communities. It considers the impact of service reductions on the most vulnerable and the interdependencies between where we cut and where we focus our attention. I'm proud to present this budget to the Chamber and to our residents as an example of how this council together is committed to making responsible decisions and delivering on our corporate plan priorities. So on behalf of the administration, I commend this budget to the council. Thank you.
Deputy Leader to second, you have about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, colleagues across the Chamber, I'd like to begin by thanking officers, particularly Scott Walker and his finance team, Lisa Potter and the media team, plus committee services colleagues for their valued assistance in supporting the production and communication of this revenue budget and the arrangements for the meeting today. As the leader has highlighted, this is a data and evidence-based budget which prioritises and supports those in greatest need, protects frontline jobs and empowers communities to be at the heart of local decision-making. Community groups play an important role in so many parts of the lives of our residents, from Bloom groups to community councils, from community resilience to community sport. That's why I'm pleased that we are continuing our support for community sport by not only continuing to provide funding for free grass pitches to support local teams, but by making the funding for that recurring so that teams can plan more confidently for the future, knowing that those costs are not returning under the current administration. Sport is a great way of bringing people together, and it's great to see many of the Perth and Kinross organisations continuing to grow and thrive. One such organisation is Janefield Swifts Community Football Club, based in North Muirton, Perth, who intend to deliver a new all-round, all-weather facility with modern changing facilities for a diverse user group, including a flourishing girls' and women's sporting community. This project will provide increased capacity in North Perth to help meet the needs of other local clubs and sports, while also enabling access to daytime usage on weekdays for sport development at local schools. The facility will also allow for expansion of Swift's successful community programme, which focuses on reducing the impact of poverty and enhancing social cohesion. To show our support for this,
as a prime example of one of the Council's top priorities of working in partnership with our communities, I'm delighted to announce that we are allocating £100,000 in this budget towards the cost of that work. In line with our economic action plan, an important part of growing a stronger and more resilient local economy is ensuring that we have the workforce with the skills and experience to meet current and future business needs. That's why we are investing £450,000 over the next 3 years in providing apprenticeship and training opportunities tailored to industry needs that will help give more young people the chance to kickstart their careers and earn while they learn. To support the growth of rural skills and employment opportunities, which can help tackle rural poverty by providing skilled jobs where people live, we are also providing £150,000 to support rural employment scheme initiatives. We are also demonstrating our commitment to growing a resilient, stronger economy in Perth and Kinross by investing an extra £7 million to make £9 million in total for the Community Property Investment Programme. At the start of 2025, Perth and Kinross was announced as having the most potential for business growth in the UK, but the problem we continually hear from new and expanding businesses is the challenge in finding suitable business units, particularly in rural areas. The Commercial Property Investment Programme began in 2022 as a way of showing the business sector that we have the confidence to invest in business land. The programme identifies sites the council owns or could purchase where units can be built. After the initial investment future investment was to come from the sale of units or land, but inflation and global uncertainties mean that there have not been enough sales to allow for this reinvestment so far. However, the rental income we receive from these units in itself has potential. That's why, as well as investing £135,000 this year to fund £3 million of capital, we'll also be ring-fencing 5% from future rental income to fund another £2 million of borrowing in each of the following 2 years. This will allow us to accelerate the programme of creating serviced business land across Perth and Kinross and build up assets which can be sold at a later date when the market improves, creating more future income or kept for the increasing amount of rental income more units will provide. Provost, these are challenging times exacerbated by many factors over which this council has no control, most notably the changes to employers' national insurance being introduced by the UK government in April, which alone will cost Perth and Kinross Council £5.4 million each year. Also, as we've heard, current pay claims well in excess of current and projected inflation rates are a further potential risk factor. The impact of these factors on council tax required to ensure we balance the books is obviously significant. Nevertheless, I believe we have created a strong budget which delivers for people and business in Perth and Kinross. Ensuring funding of services is focused primarily on where evidence of need is greatest, while also creating opportunities for economic growth through the measures I have outlined. That's why I am very pleased to second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Leader. I'd now like to invite Councillor Duff to move the first amendment, please.
Provost, thank you. Residents across Scotland are seeing increases in council tax this year, which are the highest for over a generation, and the 9.5% rate proposed by the SNP administration must be among the highest ever for Perth and Kinross, despite the insistence of the First Minister that it is unnecessary. At a time when household budgets are under so much pressure with food costs, energy costs and fuel costs, this massive 9.5% hike in council tax, if approved, will hurt. We know that there are various factors at play here. However, foremost amongst these are the decisions of the Scottish and UK governments. All local authorities, including this SNP-run one, recognise that local government has been chronically underfunded for years by the Scottish Government, with local government finance receiving a decreasing percentage share of the overall Scottish budget. Virtually every year since 2008, the council tax has either been frozen or capped by the SNP, to the extent that local authorities across Scotland can no longer provide key services due to the considerable reduction in real terms funding. Councils must be given a fairer share of the overall funding for Scotland, a point which we should all be making to our Scottish Parliament representatives. This position is exacerbated by the scale of wasteful spending at Scottish Government levels, the increased ring fencing of additional council monies, and the continual delivery of single-year Scottish budgets. Table 3 at paragraph 511 sets out the position this year. Once funding for specific services is removed, the cash increase on a comparable basis year on year is just 2.2%, well below the rate of inflation. Since the Labour government came to power at Westminster, the economic impact has been disastrous, with economic growth stagnating, inflation on the rise again, and the full impact of the rise of employers' national insurance contributions yet to be felt. On this matter, local authorities have yet again been shortchanged, with only up to 60% of our NIC costs being covered. In Perth and Kinross, we continue to see increasing pressures from the higher number of older people with more complex health and social care needs, stubborn levels of poverty, and increasing numbers of young people with additional support needs. It is against this background that we are having to make our budget choices this year. Provost, in moving to our budget amendment over the 3-year period of this budget, we propose to reject pressures totalling 1.9 million, accept additional savings proposals of 1.7 million, introduce additional expenditure proposals of 7.3 million, and utilise just over £3.1 million of reserves. With the economic situation remaining challenging and almost 6,000 of our children living in levels of relative poverty, we welcome the proposal to place £2 million into the anti-poverty earmarked reserve. While we understand the need to provide welfare support for those in need, the longer-term solution to this situation is to improve the economy, provide more better paid jobs, and help as many people as possible to lift themselves up into a better life. In this area, we propose to invest £150,000 for each of the next 3 years to reject the proposed cuts to modern apprenticeships within our workforce. It is important that Council, as an employer, continues to show the way on these important training opportunities and invests in our young workforce. We also introduced the Skills Passport a number of years back and are keen to see this valuable financial assistance continue. Our investment of £150,000 in each of the next 3 years will provide grants of up to £3,000 to help people in Perth and Kinross back into work or into a better job by providing financial assistance, such as a training course or items of equipment. Giraffe Perth has been at the forefront of inclusion, providing valuable work experience and training to those facing barriers to mainstream opportunities, such as autism, learning disabilities and mental ill health. We therefore propose to further invest in the Community Kitchen initiative with a total of £150,000 over the next 3 years. This will help to teach cooking skills, reduce food waste, build confidence and promote well-being in their clientele. It is vitally important that our communities prepare themselves for the effects of climate change. Last year, we invested significant funds in community resilience, looking to expand and support the numbers and preparedness of community resilience groups across Perth and Kinross. I have been involved within my own ward in work to achieve this, including the creation of vital resilience plans. And I've seen the willingness of our community representatives keen to help out when difficulties strike an area. We therefore propose to invest £100,000 in 2025-26 for this important purpose. The impacts of flooding are increasingly being felt across our local authority area. In previous years, we have supported the initiative to improve gully cleaning and the clearing of culverts and ditches, and we've encouraged engagement with SEPA and the farming and landowning communities to assist in alleviating this increasing problem. We are therefore providing a further £100,000 in 25-26 towards this initiative. We also propose investing in 2 further flooding initiatives: the installation of 3 flood barriers close to the River Isla, near to the U106 Bindachie Road crossroads, to prevent traffic from attempting to manoeuvre through floodwaters there, and finance to borrow for the capital costs of a natural flood management leaky dam on the Rattray Burn and associated surface water diversion in Blairgowrie to protect local houses from flooding. Initiatives to benefit the local economy are an important priority. Therefore, we will invest further in the highly successful Adapt Your Property initiative with £400,000 of capacity to provide grants to convert vacant commercial space into new commercial or residential spaces. Our city and town centres have suffered over the years with underinvestment in the time and effort needed to keep them as clean and tidy as they should be. We are therefore proposing an investment of £300,000 over the next 2 years for a deep clean to bring them up to a satisfactory state and maintain them with an intensive programme of litter, weed and graffiti removal, a good cleanse of the gutters and pavements and cleaning of road and information signs, helping to make our towns and city a better place to live, work and visit. Ground maintenance throughout Perth and Kinross has also suffered over the last few years. Further cuts to this service are proposed from previous budgets. We do not wish to see any further deterioration in this area and therefore propose an investment of £600,000 over the 3 years of this budget period to prevent implementation of these cuts and protect the remaining ground maintenance service. Lack of affordable childcare has been identified as a key barrier to employability, enterprise and training in many areas of Perth and Kinross, particularly in rural areas such as Highland Perthshire and Cooper-Angus. There has been a drop in the number of childminders delivering care across this authority, with currently only around 100 active childminders. This decline mirrors the 50% drop in the last 10 years across Scotland, a drop of more than 3,000. We therefore propose to supply £50,000 of support to GrowBiz in 2025-26 and in 26-27 to establish a project to address the lack of affordable childcare in rural Perth and Kinross, promoting childcare as an employment opportunity and, importantly, providing business support to new and existing childminders. The opening of the Crossday Link Road next month will bring with it exciting opportunities to exploit the increased access it affords to residential and commercial land off the new Kingsway, with its access to the A9, A93 and A94. Expanding our economic development has to be a key goal in improving the financial position of our local businesses and residents. We are therefore investing £1 million to benefit economic development in Perth and Kinross by aiding businesses in starting up, locating and growing in these newly developed sites, particularly through investment promotion via Invest in Perth. Further funding is included to support the events programme for council events in Perth and Kinross, to extend the Comfort Scheme membership and to support no increase in the cost of car parking permits for residents. We will also borrow an additional £1 million for roads maintenance and the fixing of potholes. As part of the Council's transformation programme, there is a need to address additional support need provision in education in order to deliver best value linked to best practice and to develop the availability of ASN provision across Perth and Kinross. This is a 5-year project due to be completed in 2028. In order to support schools until the transformation recommendations are put forward, we propose the investment of £75,000 in 2025-26 and 26-27 to provide an immediate resource for schools. This will help them cope with the increasing demand for ASN provision by supporting school projects such as the creation of quiet spaces, like the one I recently visited in Kirkmichael Primary School, or the purchase of specialised equipment such as digital technology devices. Perth and Kinross Council continues to operate two very successful programmes providing pipe and drums tuition in Kinross and Strathmore, with around 120 pupils currently being taught in each area, and both programmes having waiting lists. Both projects are the vibrant part of the cultural landscape of these communities, and both groups participate in the Scottish Schools Pipe Band Championships. We will therefore commit the sum of £40,000 towards the continuation of the programme and identifying a sustainable model for its ongoing success. We acknowledge the significant educational and personal benefits which the opportunity to learn the musical instrument provides for our pupils. We are concerned that the previously proposed cuts to the instrumental music service will have a drastic impact on the excellent musical tuition which our pupils receive, as evidenced by the splendid performances of the various bands and youth orchestras which make Perth and Kinross the envy of other local authorities. We are therefore proposing the investment of £140,000 in 2025-26, increasing to £210,000 in 26-27 and 27-28 to maintain the instrumental music service and to develop further strategies for the continuance of this service beyond that timeframe. All instances of domestic abuse and sexual violence and abuse are unacceptable. And it is important that this council continues to provide support for local organisations which help victims of such abuse. We therefore commit to providing in 2025-26 and 26-27 £40,000 to support the local work of Women's Aid and a further £40,000 for the Perth and Kinross Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre. Partnership is key to our ongoing success as a council, and this is strongly reflected in the dedicated and committed work undertaken with our colleagues in the Health and Social Care Partnership. The increasing demand from an ageing population requiring more and more complex social care support, growing mental health issues and the heightened need for care and support across all adult care groups is placing significant service demand pressures on our services. We are therefore pleased to confirm that we will pass on the full share of the £6.7 million uplift for health and social care costs and support the proposals to approve a total contribution of £106,133,000 to the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership in this budget. The Care and Repair Service offers free confidential information and advice for older people and people with disabilities who are homeowners or private tenants to enable them to improve, repair or adapt their homes. This allows them to continue to stay within their communities. Cuts of £300,000 next year and a further cut of £100,000 the following year have been previously approved. This is an important service, and financial support for these groups means they are less likely to need to enter a care home or experience a delayed discharge from hospital due to their homes not having the necessary facilities. We therefore propose to partially reject these cuts by investing £250,000 in each of the next 3 years to maintain this valuable service at an appropriate level. The Nuke Mental Health Crisis and Suicide Prevention Centre is a beacon of hope and support for those facing some of life's most challenging moments. We will support the continuation of a 24/7 service for this flagship multi-agency one-stop crisis centre with funding of £50,000 in 25-26. Several community groups also support those in our population suffering from poor mental health. Organisations such as the Men's Shed, the Women's Wellbeing Club, Mindspace and Andy's Man's Club. These groups provide a much needed and greatly appreciated role within our local communities, and we will provide funding of £60,000 for mental health community groups in 2025-26. Pressure on council funding for culture, Perth and Kinross resulted in proposals to close libraries in Alyth, Auchterarder, Burnham, Comrie and Scone. In addition, Culture PK is proposing to reduce the opening hours at AK Bell Library and the community campus libraries at Blairgowrie, Breadalbin, Lochleven, Northinch and Strathearn. We recognise the strength of feeling which such a proposal has raised in our communities and congratulate the Save Our Rural Libraries campaign for a strong campaign to ensure these closures are not put into effect. Other proposed culture PK cuts also include reducing opening hours at Perth Museum and winter closing of Perth Art Gallery. We therefore propose the additional funding of £500,000 in the next 2 years. In each of the next 2 years. This will prevent all of these cuts to our culture services and allow Culture PK and Perth and Kinross Council time to find a better funding model going forward from 27-28. Live Active Leisure manage a small number of community halls throughout Perth and Kinross on our behalf. Without additional funding, Live Active Leisure will cease to manage them at the end of this financial year. We will therefore provide funding of £25,000 during 25-26, while the property asset transformation review progresses, allowing opportunities for community asset transfers or community management agreements to be implemented. Working in partnership is a key strand in delivering services across Perth and Kinross. The opportunities for Tayside contracts to undertake further services for the Council was raised at the Scrutiny and Performance Committee. Consequently, we propose to fund a £50,000 feasibility study to explore these opportunities with Tayside contracts. The Council is responsible for a network of 1,200 litter bins and 1,600 grip bins. A number of these bins have reached the end of their useful life and are in need of replacement. In addition, councillors continue to receive requests for new litter and grip bins from constituents, and the additional funds here totalling £70,000 will help to address this. The Community Investment Fund has been an extremely successful process for supporting local groups and organisations and funding small local projects throughout Perth and Kinross on a wide range of subjects. We wish to see this popular fund continue in 2025-26 with an investment of £400,000 towards tackling inequalities, rising energy costs and poverty-related issues. Bloom groups, Friends of Cemetery groups, Path groups, litter picking groups achieve amazing results in our towns and in Perth. Bloom groups are not just about planting flowers. Since 1998, they have delivered over 70 transformative projects, raising over £2 million of additional funding, money that is mostly reinvested locally. Projects which create welcoming spaces, protect our green spaces, or breathe new life into historic structures. Last year, one Bloom group alone put in 2,000 hours of voluntary time and effort, and there are nearly 50 such groups across Perth and Kinross. We therefore propose to support this amazing voluntary partnership by investing £70,000 across these groups in 2025-26. Thank you. In our rural areas, verge cutting on our road network is necessary to maintain road safety for our walkers, cyclists, horse riders and other road users. We therefore commit to providing an additional £65,000 in each of the next 3 years towards providing an additional annual cut, meaning that road verges will receive 2 cuts per year. We will also invest funds in improving the visibility of our rural road signs with an investment of £20,000 in each of the next 2 years. Finally, we support the continuance of a rural events fund to help local groups and organisations, monies to support plans for the 80th anniversary commemorations of VE Day and VJ Day, funding to increase the administration grants for community councils, promotion of the A93 tourist route linking the Perth area with its historic links to Scone Palace and the Stone of Destiny with Royal Deeside in Aberdeen, and community transport initiatives in Auchterarder and the Carse of Gowrie. Provost, in finishing, I would like to record my personal thanks and those of my Scottish Conservative colleagues to Scott Walker and his team, and to the senior management team and all of the officers who have provided invaluable support to the budget review groups. I'd also like to take the opportunity to express our thanks to all of our staff in Perth and Kinross Council and those of our partners for continuing to work tirelessly to support our residents and communities in the most difficult of circumstances. Can I also thank the leader of the Council for the collegiate discussions which have taken place around this budget. Provost, this budget amendment is a considerate use of our resources in terms of council tax and reserves. It supports those struggling financially. It invests in our environment, invests in our children and families and the vulnerable, and supports physical and mental well-being. It also invests in our economy and in our communities. On behalf of my Scottish Conservative colleagues, I commend the budget amendment to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Chan, Councillor Duff has used 20 minutes between the two of you, so I'm afraid you will just need to formally second.
I'm happy to formally second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. Can I now invite Councillor Peter Barrett to move the second amendment?
I always thought that a leaky dam was a prostrate-related men's health issue. On a serious note to all my male colleagues, make sure you carry out the risk checker and act on any risk that's identified. Before proposing the Scottish Liberal Democrats budget, Provost, I want to express my sincere thanks to the members of the finance team who supported the Lib Dem BRG, and I'm also grateful to Claire McLaren, who was an active part of that budget review group, bloodied for the first time. Can I say that the finance team did a sterling job, even when their patience and sense of humour was tested to destruction. I also want to put on record my sincere thanks to the members of the Council's leadership team for their advice and assistance to us in shaping our new spending proposals. Provost, this year I'm filled with optimism in proposing our Scottish Liberal Democrats budget. Last year I felt something of the home time prophet and still have visions of tumbleweeds swooshing through this chamber and taking all our good ideas out the door with it. This time, however, I think it will be different. This time I'm confident that our time has come. Our budget presents solutions which can stick and solutions to the biggest problems that we face. Tackling poverty, protecting the vulnerable, harnessing the capacity and creativity of our communities, concrete action to get young people into employment and those in poorly paid jobs into better ones. Local action on climate emergency and improving community resilience, local empowerment and new delivery models to address the national crisis in social care, and again to build community resilience and capacity in that area. Our biggest pressures, as we've heard, arise from the clear and evident increased needs for social care amounting to £6.7 million. And sadly, not a penny was there for Perth and Kinross from the Scottish Government devoted to those harsh budget realities or dedicated to increasing or addressing the increasing needs of vulnerable residents and shifting the balance of care into communities. So we will meet that pressure in full, but we will also do more. So to expand the pace and scale of place-based, community-led transformation of social care, we are proposing £100,000 over 2 years, start-up funding to create a community-led social enterprise able to attract other external funding. It will initially comprise Rannoch Community Trust and Dunkeld, Burnham and District Community Development Trust as the inaugural members of the new charity, with a third organisation or trust joining the same model. As a social enterprise, it will have the opportunity to drive a mixed economy of income streams to support its financial sustainability, whilst also being able to build on local community assets and therefore not solely reliant on support from the council. It is as well a model that can be expanded to other communities. It represents an opportunity to pursue an innovative community-led approach that for the Health and Social Care Partnership tackles our ageing demographic and rural geography, but alongside this will deliver long-term multiple benefits and outcomes for individual health and well-being, community resilience, which is an ongoing theme, community wealth building, jobs, employability, skills and training, and help strengthen the rural economy. Last year, members might remember that I quoted Barack Obama in an attempt to spur this chamber into action to make good things happen, to give our communities hope. If our budget had been passed last year, we would only be needing to consider council tax rises of 6% and a bit for the next 3 years. This year, I hope that we can make up the lost ground. And so very much in line with the medium-term financial plan, we are proposing a 9.75% council tax increase for 25-26 and 26-27, and a 6.5% provisionally for year 3. The administration are only just a baby step behind us. And I say to Grant Lane, make that step. You know you really want to. Councillor McEwen's already far ahead of us. So. On our council tax proposals equate to rises of £2.63 a week for bandy properties in 25-26, £2.88 in 26-27, and £2.11 in 26-27. Sorry, 27-28. Both the Anti-Poverty Task Force and the Community Planning Partnership recommend place-based approaches to tackling poverty. Multidisciplinary teams working with community anchor organisations with tailored supports to priority families identified in our anti-poverty strategy. Our budget proposals is for £370,000 to make that happen. It's about leadership and, as I say, translating the jargon and aspiration into reality and being able to point to the measurable impacts made. And building on the successful model piloted through the Funding for Families programme, again upping the pace and scale of transformation. Provost, we regularly extol the commitment and achievements of our welfare rights team for the anti-poverty work that they do at the sharp end of service delivery. Our welfare rights team deserve huge credit for the crisis prevention and crisis response work that they do, and for the speed of response, which is sector leading in Scotland. However, in our budget, we want to recognise the increasing prevalence of financial hardship and crisis in Perth and Kinross, and the additional work and emotional load that puts on the existing team. On a recurring basis, we will add 2 welfare right full-time equivalents to the Scottish Welfare Fund and Financial and Security Fund teams, and augment those budgets by £900,000 for next year and for 26-27, and that reflects the level of needs which the funds provided since April last year to avert crisis and support people. Provost Bailey McLaren will say more about our long-standing commitment to young people's music and instrumental learning through the IMS service, but we continue to oppose the proposed cuts to teaching staff, and we will reinstate the 210 cut agreed last year. Claire will expand on our rural employability proposals, creating hundreds of work placements with mentoring support and training opportunities through our new Rural Skills Academy, which protects jobs and saves services. Claire will also speak to our proposals to protect vulnerable residents from predatory scammers. Councillor Liz Barrett will focus on how our budget supports local action to support young people and families, responds to the poverty, and empowers communities to deliver action on climate change and sustainability. We were delighted to extend the very successful Green Living Fund, and I was hugely impressed by what I heard at last week's excellent climate change and sustainability committee, showcasing some of the groups who had secured funding and how they had levered in up to 10 times more as a consequence. So we want to put £200,000 into the Green Living Fund. This is the first budget for our new councillor, Alan Watt. Alan already has a very strong track record of community action before being elected as Strathallan councillor, and he will speak on our proposals to secure rural libraries and to also maintain the opening times of the Perth Museum and Art Gallery. His initiative has instigated our proposal for the Pee in the Park public toilet facility in Auchterarder, an actual deliverable community-led solution, not merely just going through the motions. Alan will also speak to our reinstatement of the In Bloom Group's core funding. We will continue to fund the intensive housing support and outreach support in the private sector tenancy sustainment fund, both of which have proved effective at preventing homelessness and tenancy breakdown for tenants with complex and multiple needs. Provost, I am pleased that this year we are not alone in reinstating the £400,000 worth of cuts to care and repair services for people with disabilities or who, through growing old, need adaptations to continue to live in their own homes. I'm glad that message has finally got through, that this is what local government is all about. It is the glue that holds our society and community together, and it was a mistake to take that saving last year. Provost, I also want to applaud the work of our equalities team and the contribution made by officers across the council towards making Perth and Kinross a fairer, more equal and inclusive place where everyone feels valued and safe. This year we were awarded the City of Sanctuary status in recognition of the contribution and commitment to that outcome that drives and permeates the whole of the council, from the frontline service to the Chief Executive. But more needs to be done, so we will extend £53,000 worth of funding for an equalities officer to maintain this crucial role, which supports community interest groups and the growing number of local cultural and equality events. This position is also vital to monitoring and delivering on our commitments within the City of Sanctuary Action Plan moving forward. There is great work done by the Council and community partners to deliver ESOL, English Spoken as Another Language, but with better coordination of provision through a dedicated worker, we can extend the reach of ESOL in Perth to significantly enhance the quality of life for non-native speakers, promote social cohesion and contribute to the overall development and prosperity of communities. So we've made provision of £41,000 to achieve that. Councillor Willie Robertson will speak to our proposals in terms of roads maintenance, better verge cutting and ditch maintenance. Our budget sets two new savings targets. Firstly, the Council is planning to make substantial investment in AI. We believe that there needs to be a focus in delivering cash savings from that investment and have set modest savings targets in years 2 and 3 to that investment. Similarly, we are seeking to put a savings target to the review of home to school transport. Provost, our budget is radical and innovative. It is transformational and sustainable. It balances strategic use and deployment of earmarked reserves for tackling poverty and delivering transformation in new models of delivery of key services and working with communities to deliver outcomes, whilst at the same time maintaining our non-earmarked reserves at a prudent level. And to the Chamber, I commend the Scottish Liberal Democrats budget and I'm happy to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I'd like to invite Bailey McLaren to second the amendment. Bailey McLaren, you have about 9 minutes.
Provost, thank you. Could I also start with echoing the thanks that Peter offered to all involved. First for me, learning curve, and it was an enjoyable experience, can I say. Provost, I'm delighted to second the Liberal Democrats budget for 25-26, a budget that recognises communities' employment needs, the ongoing fight to raise those living in poverty and deep poverty up, the ongoing commitment to address the impact of the changing climate on our scenic local environment, and additionally demonstrates our commitment to deliver essential services for residents at a time of increasing demand and expectation of easy accessibility of these services. Perth and Kinross has a strong rural economy delivered in the main by agricultural, forestry and angling sectors. We want to ensure this continues to be so, and these sectors deliver much more than the core of their business. They are governmental policy deliverers, rural community stakeholders and environmental custodians. After a recent rural roundtable discussion involving the strategic leads of the council, rural stakeholders, Council Leader Lang and myself, it was clear that there is both an immediate and long-term need for skilled workers in these rural sectors. So we therefore have placed funding for 2 new rural employability initiatives, a workplace programme which is designed to provide mentors for young people on placement in entry-level rural jobs. In fact, on Monday I was introduced to a forestry business who would benefit from such a programme. Secondly, a rural skills academy, to establish a rural skills academy which would remove barriers to employment, enhance job security for those already employed in the industry by upskilling. It would connect students with local employers, and this would be supported by Perth and Kinross skills team and employment support team, focusing on the and underemployed. The potential to create jobs for life through this initiative is achievable. It is an approach delivering education and learning opportunities through a different lens, an entrepreneurial approach. As part of the same roundtable meeting, mental health support for those working in rural businesses was shown to be an increasing need in these challenging economic and political times. And this was definitely a takeaway that we all got from this discussion. Therefore, our support to further expand and strengthen Farm Strong's successful work in Perth and Kinross area to facilitate more events for both male and females in the sector. This charity engages to prevent suicide by early intervention. Recognition of mental health need is important to the Scottish Liberal Democrat group. We are therefore also providing continued funding for a scams officer, which has supported more than 350 residents affected by this growing silent threat throughout our society. Social care service deliverance is challenging, particularly in rural and remote locations with a higher level of unmet need. We propose a different approach to establish a community-led charitable trust, which will be the infrastructure body providing care services in these locations through community development trusts, a community-led social enterprise for social care. We recognise the important work of communities. They are often best placed to identify and deliver solutions, such as P in the Park in Auchterarder, Lochleven and Heritage Trail are examples. We will further fund community transport support to set up sustainable transport arrangements and local bus provision to meet local needs. This is an opportunity for areas who suffer from poor transport provision. Further community-focused initiatives include an Equalities Officer role, which will enhance delivering our City in Sanctuary Action Plan. Community Investment Fund, which has successfully delivered many worthy projects across Perth and Kinross communities since its inception. Additionally, support Perth Community Flood Aid, Community Asset Transfer Support Fund, and the reinstatement of the Bloom Group cuts and care and repair service, which greatly assists community living. In setting a council tax of 9.75%, we can award further investment in culture Perth and Kinross to maintain opening hours of the award-winning Perth Museum, Art Gallery, AK Bell Library, and ensure the rural libraries of Burnham, Auchterarder, Alyth and Cormorant closure threat is lifted. We recognise the important role of libraries in rural communities who deliver more than book lending. The recent closure threats of these rural libraries have caused enormous anxiety, and this has been demonstrated by the Save Our Rural Libraries campaign. And we do hope that the group continue with their united voice to encourage use of the services offered and explore opportunities working with Culture Perth and Kinross. We support and recognise the important work of both Perth RASAC and Perth Women's Aid in the protection and caring for vulnerable people. Young people are our future. They're shaped through learning, education, their living environment, local communities and wider society. Employment opportunities for young people through modern apprenticeship and graduate training places will offer a step into a career post-secondary education. Instrumental music service cuts we will fully reverse. Again, another successful campaign, and we would support the valuable summer activity clubs. Local play areas allow generational social interaction, access to outside space, contribute to positive mental well-being and community cohesion. So therefore, play area maintenance is a cost we view as important. Outreach Pupil Support Resource will provide valuable support enhancing the current pupil support across schools where needed most. This will result in young people being able to maintain full-time class placement, also reducing class disruption from challenging or distressing behaviour. Improving life for those living in poverty or deep poverty in Perth and Kinross is work in progress, and we do want this to continue, and therefore we support Financial Insecurity Fund, Intensive Housing Support, Think Yes Tenancy Sustainment Fund for non-council tenants, Tailored Employability Support for priority families, Welfare Fund team capacity and Welfare Rights team capacity. Thank you, Provost. I'll be there. We will invest in roadside ditch maintenance, reinstate a second roadside verge cut and create further road repairs and maintenance opportunity through additional borrowing. Road safety is critical for all road users. Provost, we present a visionary, realistic, community-focused, Liberal Democrat budget today, which I have high hopes for. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey McLaren. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Colin Stewart to move the third amendment.
Thank you, Provost, Bailies, councillors. I'm pleased to present the third budget of the independent group in this council term for consideration by you all. But firstly, my heartfelt thanks go out to all officers who've supported us in this process, particularly Caroline, Alison, Claire, Craig and Scott. In bringing this budget before you, we have had some key principles in mind. The need to support the excellent work that goes on in the third sector and by passionate, committed volunteers in our communities. The need for the council to continue to transform and become more efficient over time. The need to support particularly our rural communities who can suffer from a lack of services. And finally, the need to support businesses and to maintain and grow the economy of Perth and Kinross. Officers have, of course, brought forward their proposals for extra spending and new savings in the council budget. We have been robust in challenging the extra spending and so reject over £4.5 million of additional spending over the 3 years, particularly in relation to assumptions around home to school transport, which is already conducting trials in order to redesign and transform the service. On savings and income, we have looked at the data for the garden waste collection scheme, the brown bins, and we believe that the tipping point has been reached, and so we reject the proposed increase in charges in years 2 and 3, but will allow people to purchase more than the current limit of 2 garden waste permits. In our own proposed savings, we have carefully considered which areas we feel that our residents and taxpayers get most benefit from, and we've focused on continuous improvement and transformation of council services, supported by investment in business improvement and a trial of artificial intelligence with a view to further potential investment in future years. We have associated For that, we have associated savings targets with all of these proposals for a total of over £6 million over 3 years. Perhaps the most significant part of this budget amendment, however, is our proposals for new and additional expenditure. We would seek to support, firstly on business, we would seek to support new and existing businesses with £4.5 million of investment, including £2 million for a rural commercial property investment programme to support the creation of new commercial units in rural communities, with any income to the programme being recycled back into it. We repeat our proposals for restarting the successful micro business grant scheme at £1 million and introducing a small business interest-free loan scheme also at £1 million. And we would invest a further £500,000 in the successful Adapt Your Property scheme to help bring properties back into use. In education, we would reject in full the cuts to the instrumental music service and cancel the prior increases in charges. We would also implement a full and permanent reversal of the proposed library closures in Comrie, Scone, Alyth, Burnham and Auchterarder, recognising the vital role that that libraries play in the life of rural communities. To support residents and communities across Perth and Kinross, we would continue the successful Community Investment Fund at £300,000 and would increase the administration budget for community councils to £1,000. We would invest an additional £3 million over 3 years to fix potholes in our roads, and we would improve road safety with £250,000 to get through a historical list of projects, £130,000 for traffic signals in Milnathort, £22,000 for road flooding barriers on the A923 and B9454 at Cootie Bridge and Crathis Bridge. And we propose a £1.2 million programme to reclaim existing roads and pavements which are currently covered by overgrown verges. This would make rural routes safer by widening the carriageway width for pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders and vehicles. We recognise the concerns of residents about the Council's new grass cutting policy, not only by leaving areas looking unkempt and increasing possible tick-borne disease, but also by reducing available open green space for people to walk and children to play. And so we would commit £350,000 of recurring funding to reverse the previous cuts to grass cutting. That's not too many cuts. These additional proposals amount to just under £13 million over the 3-year period of this budget, supported by a contribution from earmarked reserves of over £5 million, although over the 3 years we would make a net contribution to unearmarked reserves of around £2.4 million. In alignment with our previously stated position as a group, we're providing funding for capital investment through the revenue budget in order not to increase overall council debt, while also making a further contribution of £0.75 million by the end of year 3. Adding an additional 0.25% of the council tax to bring it up to 1.5% in total, and reducing the capital programme by £33 million would increase the capital fund balance to around £80 million or more by 2040, and it would continue rising each year thereafter. And we will do all of that while asking our residents and taxpayers for the lowest rise in council tax of any proposal before us today, 7.5% in 25-26 and 26-27, and just 3% in 27-28. Provost members, I commend this budget to council.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I'd now like to invite Baillie Brock to second. And Baillie Brock, you have about 14 minutes.
Thank you, Provost. I'm proud to second independent group budget, which is focused on supporting our communities, our budgets, and focused on supporting our communities. Our budget seeks to protect frontline services as much as possible within the financial pressures faced by the council. We all know the importance that getting a good start to the day has on it being a successful day. This is especially true for children and young people, and our budget recognises the important role breakfast clubs play in helping deliver this. We are proposing increasing the charge by £1 for those who can afford to pay to help support increased rollout of breakfast clubs in all schools, especially those that don't currently have one. This would allow all children in Perth and Kinross to get the best start in their day and could help improve their chances of doing well at school. Excuse me. We must also do what we can to help older people in our communities too, which is why we are proposing to reinstate £50,000 of funding to support officer capacity to prevent our vulnerable residents from being the victims of financial scams, which can have a huge short and long-term impact on someone's life. Our budget today also seeks to propose big measures to help reduce our community's carbon footprint. In the long term, we're funding for feasibility studies into new integrated transport hubs for Ballinlough and Stanley, which would offer residents the ability to access new rail links and connect with the bus network too. We are also continuing to provide funding for a feasibility study into reintroducing a railway station at Kinross in line with this council's previously agreed support for that project. More immediately, we are proposing £13,000 to reinstate the early cars bus from Errol to Perth to support commuters and £120,000 for new bus stop infrastructure across the network. We also know that whilst the council must make savings, and these will need to come from a reduction in our council estate, that community halls play an important role in our communities, which is why we are providing a further year's funding to keep them open and allow communities to consider community asset transfer requests. We know that COVID took a significant toll on the local economy and that many of our communities need support to recover. Therefore, I'm delighted to announce £50,000 for rural events to provide communities with financial support for new and existing events that make an economic and community impact. I'm also pleased to confirm not only a reinstatement of the previously agreed cut to Bloom and PAF group funding, but that we are tripling the amount available to them for materials from £18,000 to £54,000. This recognises the hugely important role they play in keeping our communities welcoming for residents and visitors alike. It is not only economic development that is important to our communities, but sport also provides a key role in ensuring community well-being. Therefore, I am delighted to continue our support for curling here in the home of the Roaring Game with funding for an Access to Curling initiative to give more young people an opportunity to try it out. Finally, I am happy to announce that we are proposing to continue the suspension of charges for our grass pitches and parks so our local teams and community groups can continue to use them free of charge. Provost, I commend this amendment to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Baillie Brock. Members, are there any further amendments? If there are no further amendments, members, we will now break for lunch and recess, and we will return at 2 p.m. 2 p.m, please.